I'm Daniel James, and you're listening to 7am. South Australia does not usually wake up on election day at the centre of the national mood. But this morning, a contest that looks settled on paper is carrying a much stranger energy. The government, led by Peter Malinauskas, is expected to win comfortably. The real movement is happening elsewhere, in the noise around One Nation. The protest vote, in the middle of a cost of living crisis, gathering around a once marginal party, and the possibility that a state election could end up telling us something bigger about where Australian politics is heading. Today, editor of InDaily SA, Belinda Willis, on the state election that might be a whitewash for Labor, but a warning for everyone else. It's Saturday, March 21. Belinda, a lot of people are looking at South Australia as a test case for how One Nation might go federally and in other states. We've seen videos of Sky News and Pauline Hanson walking the streets being fawned over by fans.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
God, this is like random.
Is that genuinely how South Australians are feeling? What's the vibe?
Well, it's an interesting one. Pauline Hanson has been here more than usual. She did come here during the federal election campaign as well. You know, it has been an interesting vibe. South Australia isn't a state that normally votes One Nation. We don't have a single One Nation member in the upper or lower house.
Peter.
Hello, Peter. Well
done.
Thank you very much.
How you going, Peter?
Thank you.
I'll get a photo for you.
Thank you.
Pauline Hanson obviously has been around a long time and people recognise her.
Was there any footage of Pauline Hanson having a pie floater, for instance?
I haven't seen her having a pie floater at this stage. There has been all sorts of stunts going on here. She did have a confrontation with the Premier at one stage, leaving one of the media outlets recently, where she took him to task over some comments he'd raised recently. But I haven't seen her eat a pie floater personally.
Apart from the pie floater, how much of a presence has she actually had in the state herself in the lead up to the vote? And what are some of the things that One Nation are offering here?
Well, it is quite fascinating. This has been an election where at times I wonder, is the media helping raise the profile rather than the party itself? I guess it's very difficult in the media when you cover politics to keep people engaged, and One Nation obviously is an outlet that does grasp people's attention with some of their more out there comments that they make. So in terms of policy, it feels like there's been a transferring of the national policies. There's been a huge focus on anti-migration.
The Premier of South Australia has finally revealed he backs the immigration Ponzi scheme. Yep, that's right. We haven't got enough workers today, apparently, so we'll bring some in to care for the elderly, and when those workers get too old, we'll just keep bringing more and more and more people.
There has been a lot of talk about the poison of the left in education institutions and how they want to stamp that out.
I mean, that's the reality of what we're dealing with. We've got drag queen story time, you've got the education
What you're
system
referencing affects
young people.
a small cohort of the
There's been a lot about that politics around the haves and the have-nots. And there's a lot of people here, like people all around the nation, who are concerned about the rising cost of living, whether they can afford to buy a house, whether they can actually rent a house.
Found it, an independent property analysis group have said that if migration was cut by 100,000, well, houses would be more affordable. This flies in the face of everything the uni-party leadership keep telling us. They say
they've been calling Labor and Liberal parties the uni parties to sort of push that agenda even further, that they're the elite, that they're the haves, you're the have-nots, we're here to speak out for you.
The people of South Australia clearly want an effective and strong voice that's going to stick up for them after being let down by uni-party politics for far too long.
And Corey Bernardi, who's the SA leader here, also has been creating little videos on Instagram mocking Aboriginal people at various institutions around town.
I'm at the front of the Women's and Children's Hospital. It's an institution, but apparently it's now called the Kiki Kukawardli Centre. Why? Why are we doing this to ourselves? No one knows where the Kukawardli Centre is. They just know where the Women's and Children's Hospital needs to be.
There's sort of little snippets that don't really go into any detail, but like work on that divisiveness and that sort of disaffected voting population.
So the usual One Nation shtick, really. What have you been hearing from voters who are planning to vote for One Nation? What are their reasons? Are there local issues at play here, or is it a similar case to elsewhere around the country where it's all bundled up in a protest vote?
I think there is a huge element of protest vote around this. Our most recent polling has shown that the areas most likely to vote for One Nation are actually in the country regions or outer suburbs. We do have a Labor government, and a lot of people in the regions traditionally vote Liberal. Our Liberal Party has been in disarray. We've had a regular changing of leaders here. Our campaign has not been helped at all by having the federal coalition imploding. And people in the country areas, a lot of people are saying that they've had it. They don't feel like they're being listened to. And there's this party that is emerging and saying, oh, we've got someone you can blame. You can blame the amount of immigrants that are coming in, or you can blame the party for just pandering to the elite. So there is an element around that, I think.
How are the major parties actually trying to head off One Nation, particularly the government, who is expected to be returned quite comfortably? What have they been doing to try and stymie One Nation's ascent?
Well, I don't think our government really has a great deal to be concerned about in terms of being returned. We have 47 lower house seats, and they currently hold, I think it's 29 of those, and the Liberal Party holds 13. There has been, I think, from the Labor Party an all seats campaign that they would like to, clean the place out if they possibly could. I do think that both leaders of the Liberal and Labor Party have tiptoed around the issue in the early stages of the campaign, that they haven't spoken out about some of those more concerning statements and policies that One Nation have been putting forward. Yesterday I did hear them during interviews where they were more robust and gradually have been stronger about picking apart some of those arguments that One Nation is making. But they've left that run a bit late, considering we're at the polls today.
Coming up, is South Australia the canary in the coal mine for One Nation and federal politics?
Pauline, I've got to jump in here. This surprises me, right? I've done street walks with a lot of politicians over the years, and you're such a polarising figure, but you're treated like a rock star here. Everybody wants to get a photo with you, and most of them have got kind words to say.
Chris, they have. People are screaming out. All they want is hope. They see me as hope for the future.
Linda, what do you think success would look like for One Nation as the results roll in over the coming days?
Well, I guess even one seat would be a success, really.
Yeah.
The polls that we have been publishing are showing that there is the likelihood of definitely one upper house seat that Cory Bernardi is likely to pick up, possibly two, maybe even three in the upper house. The lower house, it's no one can really predict what will happen there. I think that success for them, though, would be that their profile has raised. I think that is a good thing for them nationally, no matter what. Everyone seems to be talking about them. The media is talking about them a lot more than they have for years. We're talking about them. The surge of oranges everywhere around the place. So I think that it's been a successful campaign for them no matter what.
And what's the worst case scenario for the Liberal Party here? Because they're polling behind One Nation, correct?
Yes, that is the case at the moment. They have had a really tumultuous time. They've very shortly before the election, I think like a month out, swapped leaders again. We've had a former Liberal leader who was convicted around drug charges. He has popped up again in one of the seats. He's challenging Labor and Liberal back in his old seat in Black, where he's always been very popular. The polling is showing that there has been a slight rise in awareness and support for their new leader, Ashton Hearn, who has been like a dynamo really on the campaign trail, but she's had a very small runway. They could end up with, single-digit seats. There's another former Liberal who's standing as an independent who's facing domestic violence charges at the moment in the southeast, who's standing against the Liberal member there. It's going to be a fascinating day for all of us political junkies here. I'm quite excited about seeing how it all pans out.
Yeah, we need to get a life, don't we? What about pre-polling? Has there been a big turnout in the days before Election Day?
There has been. It's really interesting how strong that has become, actually. Back in the olden days, early days of covering politics, it would always be the big hurrah would be on the Saturday polling day. But these days, people get out early. They're all out at the booths. All of the candidates are at the booths. People are voting early. So I think it was only yesterday that the Labor Party released their costings for their policies, but a huge number of people would have already voted.
If One Nation does manage to convert poll numbers into actual votes and seats, what do you think that means for the rest of the country, Belinda? Could a strong result in South Australia translate federally, or are we reading too much into this at this stage?
That is really hard to predict. I think what it should be doing is giving a wake-up call nationally to parties that are not addressing Australians out there who are really concerned about their futures, that they feel disenfranchised and not listened to. They feel like they haven't been able to have a voice, that they can't, buy a house. Like that has always been the Australian dream, that their children, they worry about their futures. I think it should be a wake-up call for the Labor Party around that. And I think that the Liberal and National Party need to get their act together. There's been quite a strong move towards the more conservative faction within the Liberal Party. And I think that as a result, they have lost a lot of their voters. And you've seen that nationally with the Teals. We haven't got that same strength in Teal candidates here. There will be some people drifting toward the Greens, and polling has shown that between the 18 and 34-year range, there has been, quite strong polling for them. But I think we have a very popular Premier here in Peter Malinauskas, our Labor Premier, and he is part of the right faction in the Labor Party. So I think they've just been hoovering up that section of Liberal voters who are traditionally going to be out there at the polling booth for the Liberal Party.
The drift towards One Nation is likely to sharpen as the fuel crisis starts to bite, Belinda. And when people are under pressure, governments usually wear the blame. The Prime Minister has announced a fuel task force this week. Is that going to be enough for voters who are already feeling the strain?
I don't think it'll have any impact whatsoever. We have to recognise that there's so many people out there that don't feel connected with politics. And we know as political reporters and journalists and editors that we have to work really hard to try to get buy-in from our readers for stories that are particularly focused on our democracy and around politics. And it is so important. But there has been over the years, that has fallen away. There's lots of people, that say, they wouldn't vote if they didn't have to. And I think pulling together something like that around the issues around fuel isn't going to make any difference whatsoever if you've got farmers out there who can't, fuel their tractors and preparing for planting out on the farms or to be able to truck their goods elsewhere. And I think that overall, even more so than the impact of One Nation at the moment, we do have such a vast difference between the numbers of people supporting our two major parties, and that Labor, if it does end up, like Western Australia, dominating our parliament, the bigger concern that I see is that there isn't going to be that scrutiny, that there's going to be, a sweeping through of change and legislation that won't have that same impact and input from the wider majority of people in the state.
Well, Belinda, it's going to be a fascinating day. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
7am is a daily show from Solstice Media. It's made by Atticus Bastow, Ariel Richards, Chris Dengate, Crystal Keller, Nicole Johnston, Travis Evans, Zoltan Fetcho, and me, Daniel James. Our theme music is by Ned Beckley and Josh Hogan of Envelope Audio. Thanks for listening to 7am this week. Have a great weekend.